All right. Well, we're going to have some intro slides and some getting to know you slides. So hopefully anyone that is able to join us just a few minutes after the hour is able to jump right in. So welcome everyone again to the Strategic Workforce Planning for Health Profession Education and Training, Retention and Recruitment Learning Collaborative. That's a mouthful. My name is Suzanne Spear. I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Development at ACU, and I am thrilled to be joined by a few of my colleagues from the STAR Center. Alex Rollwing is our training specialist, and having a little bit of technical difficulties with his internet connection today. We were just chatting before we got on. It's Murphy's Law, so you probably won't see him or hear him today, but he is here. Actually, he's on by audio. But he is going to be here from ACU throughout this series. And then Mariah Blake, who you have probably already heard from through email. She is our program manager, and she is going to keep us moving and running along and making sure all of the technical aspects are there, and just keeping sort of track of all the things in the background. So you might hear her voice, you might see her from time to time, but that's who the STAR Center team is. We are thrilled to partner with our friends at Whitley for this learning collaborative. We, like I said, we're just so excited and grateful to have Kelly Rondeau as our subject matter expert for this learning collaborative. She is going to be the person that you hear from most during this time together. She has this wonderful expertise, and so we're just grateful to have her with us as our subject matter expert. So if you haven't heard or you really aren't familiar with ACU or the Association of Clinicians for the Underserved, we are a national nonprofit organization that was founded 25 years ago by alumni of the National Health Service Corps. We've changed quite a bit over the years, but our mission remains the same, and that's access to care for underserved populations, as well as the crucial and critical support of clinicians and of those clinicians who are caring for the underserved populations. We have a bunch of different programs that you can read all about on our website. But the program that we are here for today is the STAR Center. As I mentioned, Mariah, Alex, and myself were all with the STAR Center. And who, you might be asking yourself, well, who is the STAR Center? Well, the STAR Center stands for Solutions, Training, and Assistance for Recruitment and Retention. We have a national training and technical assistance partner cooperative agreement through the Bureau of Primary Health Care. And we are funded to develop tools and resources that are at no cost to you through the Bureau of Primary Health Care, just like the Learning Collaborative. It's at no cost. So you can check out all of our tools and resources on our website, which is separate from our ACU website, and that's chcworkforce.org. Sign up for our newsletter and just get up to date on all things STAR Center. So just some housekeeping items as we start our time together. So this session is going to be recorded, just like all of our sessions. It is going to be posted to the discussion board. So if a member of your team isn't able to join us, or you want to go back and hear some things again, or if you are not able to be on for whatever reason, and you just want to listen to it again, it's absolutely there for you. Feel free to be on camera during this. I know Kelly loves to see faces and interaction. This is supposed to be really an interactive session. And so we hope that you guys will engage with her and with us as well. Feel free to use the chat box or unmute yourself to ask questions, comments, or thoughts. We are going to have some time during this and probably some of the subsequent sessions that use software interface called Mentimeter, and we'll walk you through that in a minute. And so just really engage with us. We want to hear from you and hear what you're thinking and what your concerns are, what your wins are, all of that kind of good stuff as we go along. Feel free to message Mariah if you have any technical difficulties. And then finally, for housekeeping right now, we're going to have evaluations at the end of every session. And I know it's a lot, but we would appreciate if you could give us your feedback on that. So our goals for this learning collaborative, really, these are just sort of general learning goals, and Kelly will go over specific ones for this learning collaborative. But there's a lot of information that's going to be shared through with Kelly as an expert faculty, other people, all of that. And so we're just going to be doing a lot of learning. We want you guys to share your challenges, your strengths, your questions, your concerns, all of that. Really don't ever feel like there's a question or something that you can't share or ask during this time together. We want you guys to end up with relationships with us as a team, as with your peers, as well as the folks that are at your organization within your team. That's something that's really vital to this. And with those relationships, you're going to build processes and an overall strategy to develop a health professions education and training strategic plan. So the tools for this learning collaborative, so we've got our didactic presentations on our webinars. We also are going to have discussion during our webinar sessions. That's definitely a crucial part of it. You'll have assignments, which will be hosted on the discussion board, and you should have received a login for that. And then we'll do follow-ups and check-ins throughout. I know that Kelly's going to be doing some of that. We're going to be doing some of that. Really the goal is for you all to feel supported and really edified as we go along throughout this learning collaborative. So just before we go over to Mentimeter to do a little get to know you exercise, I wanted to highlight the discussion board and how you access it. So if you go to our homepage at the Star Center, chcworkforce.org, and click log into the discussion board, you will go and log in there. And then once you've logged in, you'll see the discussion group there, and then you'll click on the strategic health professions education and training learning collaborative there. So again, if you have any problems or any concerns about getting on there, feel free to message Mariah and she'll get you pointed in the right direction. One thing I want to mention about the discussion board that I don't have a separate slide for, but I think it's worth noting. So each of our sessions in the learning collaborative will have its own tab. There will be a section for resources. So our PowerPoint, our homework, our recordings, all of that information will be in the resources section. And then on the discussion section, that is where you can ask questions. Some questions might be posed, that you can answer, those type of things to really interact with one another during this learning collaborative. Okay, so let's do a little get to know you. So now that you know who we are, we would love to get to know you all a little bit more, and then also for your fellow cohort members to get to know you as well. So you can do this through your phone. You can take a picture of a QR code. That's always a great way to do it. Or you can open another tab on your browser and go to menti.com. If you do that, once you get to menti.com, go to 8751-3437. And so you can go to menti.com and enter those 8 numbers, 8751-3437. And I'm going to switch over to that screen. And so once you get there, maybe Mariah can put it in chat. So, and this is the wrong one here, y'all. Sorry. Apologize. Okay, I think we're at the beginning now. I believe we're at the beginning. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So introductions. So love to put your name, role, and where you work. Your organization would be great. And you can just freeform it here. Awesome, Kelly, thank you so much. She's based out of Seattle. And her camera loves to play tricks on us.
Right. Today I'm only in half shadow, so I've got a Phantom of the Opera thing going on. And you'd think it'd be sunny outside based on the light here, but no, not the case.
Okay. And so since I had to change my slide a little bit, I wasn't on the right slide, I apologize. You can either refresh your URL, or you can go to slide there. So it looks like most of you got it. All righty. I'm gonna move this if I can see. Okay, Arizona, a recruiter. I love it. Director of Provider Services in California. All right, Boston, Jen, I hope you guys are digging out, and I hope maybe I heard a whisper of maybe some more snow for y'all this weekend. All right, Chief Development Officer. All right, in California, great. Chief Strategy Officer. So we have lots of leadership on here. I love it. That's fantastic, as well as some HR. This is wonderful. All right. California, Idaho, VP of Medical Services, Lifelong Medical Care in Berkeley, California. Awesome. I love it. I feel like there's a lot of California, but then we have other folks too. In California, Denver, Colorado. Yes, thank you, Helen, for chiming in. Helen is joining us. She's also from the Star Center, but here doing also behind the scenes, just doing some learning of her own. Great. Missouri, represent, HR director. I love it. So we'll also, if you guys would like, we'll take some screenshots of these and also put them in the resources as well, just so you guys can get to know your fellow cohort members as well. All right, next slide here. Okay, how long have you been in your role? So 0 to 3 years, 4 to 7, 7 to 10, or over 10 years. This is awesome. Okay. So far, we have a really good mix of people who are relatively new to your role, and then also people who have been in their roles for a really long time, which is awesome and amazing. We love that sort of cross-section of experience and also a lot of different roles. And so that's really going to add a lot to this learning collaborative. So glad you guys are all here. All right. So the majority of the folks have been here for under 3 years or under. Then again, also have a lot of people with some really good experience. So awesome. All right. So what's one thing you're hoping to get out of this learning collaborative? Could be big, could be small. I know you guys are all looking forward to hanging out with us next time. Strategies to retain clinicians, ease burnout, recruitment strategies, strategies and best practices, yes. Strategic workforce planning ideas for other health centers, yes. Evidence-based practices, yep, absolutely. Love it. Wonderful. You're new, hopefully you'll be edified. All right. Wonderful. Diverse trainee candidates, yes. Collaboration with health centers across the country. Can we work together to create programs? Yes, absolutely. We hope so too. Wonderful. Okay, new ideas. Yes, hopefully we get some new ideas. Wonderful. Thank you guys. Support recruitment and retention. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Next question is, how much interaction have you had with health professions, education, and training, or how much interaction with the HPET institutions does your health center have? Like a residency program, a nursing program, a physician's assistant, or other schools or residencies? And this one kind of changes as people answer. So in first place, we have some folks that do have students or residents for many programs at their health center. And then second is coming in that they have 2 or more health professions training programs at their health center. And then other folks say they don't have any at all. And then we have a couple folks who work with 1 education program and occasionally have students at their health center. So awesome. This is also great because y'all can learn from each other and we can hear what you're doing. And so not only you're going to be learning from Kelly, but also each other as well. So this is fantastic. Thank you so much for weighing in. Okay. And so some of you guys have already answered this because I started out here, so my apologies. But last question for this part is what type of health profession education training programs does your health center interact or participate with? So, sorry, y'all. To Tina, Amy, and Nicola. So for those of you who have a ton of programs, what kind of programs do you have or interact with? Oh, great. Okay, so one of your health centers has a dedicated position to health professions education training. Awesome. Nurse practitioner residency, PA schools, primary schools. Awesome. Oh my gosh, you guys are all answering at the same time. I can't keep up. Dental students, residency program, family medicine residency program, clinical rotations, PA clinical rotations, MA externships. Yes, so MAs are such a hot topic right now on recruitment and retention of MAs. MA apprenticeship, DA training program. This is awesome and amazing. I love the depth and the breadth of what y'all are doing. Okay. Training for case managers and non-clinical positions. Ooh, very cool. Medical assistants. Wonderful. Well, this is fantastic and super helpful, I know, to Kelly as she, we've got some more in here. Dental students, APR and internships. DNP fellows.
Shout out to the hometown scholar.
Yeah, awesome. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you guys so much for sharing, interacting with us, sort of letting us know who's in the room, the virtual room with us, and appreciate you guys sharing a little bit about your background with health professions education and training. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Kelly, and she is going to share the slides from here on out, and she's going to be presenting. And with that, I turn it over to you, Kelly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzanne, and everyone for being here. I'm really excited. This is a very cool opportunity to be talking about this topic with you all, and excited that you're taking the time to be here. So you should be able to see our introduction slide. Is that what you're seeing? Thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways, question marks?
Correct.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the thumbs ups. All right. So this is session 1, and we're going to be talking today is going to be level setting. So you probably know based on the answers to those Menti questions, there's probably a good deal that will be review here. And my goal is to get us all sort of on the same page with information, and maybe share a little bit of insights beyond what you already have in your toolkit. All right, buddy, so welcome. This is me. My background, I most recently worked at Northwest Regional Primary Care Association, worked there for a little over 6 years or a little under 7 years, depending on how you count. And before that was with a nonprofit called Prevail out here in Seattle, working with folks with disabilities in a variety of settings, which was very fun. Enjoyed that very much. My organization now is Whipley. So just really briefly about Whipley, we do all kinds of things. We started out as a CPA firm, but we really branched out. So we do performance management, organizational performance, and of course my team, which is formal. I don't know that we've settled on a formal name, but I'm going to drop a name here if you've heard it before, but I work with Kiki Nocella on the GME and workforce team. So that's just a little bit about us. Suzanne referenced this a bit. I do love to have a bit of feedback, whether it's visual or audio. So just helps me know that, and my anxiety to know that I'm not putting you all to sleep. So please feel free to unmute and chat whenever you feel the urge. I don't mind being interrupted. I enjoy it very much. But also at the same time, get comfortable and take this opportunity for some self-care. Get yourself some water, a snack, which I forgot to grab my snack, but that's okay. I'll make it. And if you can, cameras on. But also we've all been doing this Zoom thing for far too long now, and I understand camera exhaustion. Basically, though, I want this to be a relaxed setting for you all to share information and exchange ideas. And this is not a formal setting at all. I love to have fun and play. So if you'll just join me in this casual setting, I'd appreciate it. let's see. So Suzanne mentioned this. Overall, we're going to work on, over the next 5 sessions, actually developing a strategic workforce plan, and we'll get into definitions of that. And I guess I'm the expert faculty. So let's see. And then today, here we go. So today we're going to do some introductions. We'll build a little bit more on what we just did through Menti. And we'll talk about why we're having this conversation, go through those definitions, get in a little bit more into the HPET models and approaches, which we'll spend the bulk of our time there. And as we come there, I'll acknowledge that I've probably not made an exhaustive list yet, but I am working on it. Talk briefly about resources and some homework to start getting the thoughts processing and ideas happening. And then we'll go about our day. So we have 75 minutes scheduled, which it looks like by my clock, 40, a little bit under an hour left. I do enjoy ending on time or early so that you can have some of your time back. So we'll try to do that, but don't let that discourage you from participating. We can always just end early if we have a really robust conversation. All right, we're gonna hop back over to Menti. Hopefully you haven't closed that window. If you did, however, go ahead and reopen that. And Mariah, if you could put the Menti code back in the chat for everybody, and I will stop my share and have the ACU team share the Menti page. Helps if my view is making it so I can see it. No?
Can you see it, Kelly?
Yeah, but that was because I've got the, yeah, my fault.
Okay.
All right, so I'm curious for introductions for our icebreaker today. What was your first or worst job? And how do you feel like it still influences you at work today? I will share that one of my first jobs was, and feel free to set in your answers as I'm chatting. I'll just fill the space here. One of my first jobs was selling snow cones at the rodeo. I grew up in Southern California, and I can't remember where that rodeo was, but it was a lot of fun. We were little, and we just had so much fun eating too many snow cones, too much sugar, and just running around. And I think that that's probably where my joy of work comes from, but also my not to overdose on sugar early in the at all while you're working. And then I had another job at the mall, and I had a manager named well, we called him Passive Aggressive Pete. His mother didn't name him that. And I feel like today that still influences me, that at least for myself and my personality, I'm not really great at reading subtext. So please just tell me if I'm not doing something right and not just like hint at it. So let's go through these. So we got some fast food and public health and baristas. Fun job, not healthy. Learn about business. Yep. Strong work ethics. Awesome. Post-grad training. I love this. The people I work with are just as important as the work that I'm doing. Awesome. Kind of flipping through. So hopefully we're grabbing this. And I love, Suzanne, the idea of putting these answers on the discussion board page. Car hop at Sonic. I'm sorry, I'm envisioning that with roller skates, which are like, I don't put anything on my feet but shoes. So yeah, anticipating people's needs for sure. 10 key, no kidding. I was an adult when I learned 10 key. That is an amazing skill set to have. So these are great. Give it maybe 30 more seconds to add in some answers here. Zero support or helpful feedback. Oof, that's rough. Oh, and they were the owner. Ooh, aquarium summer job. Heck yeah. I'd love to work at the aquarium. Okay, fabulous. So in addition to a lot of experience and a range of experience and a range of roles, we have a range of backgrounds too. So thank you for sharing this information about yourselves. I just find it so interesting what people have done in their past lives. So go back to sharing my screen. Buttons. Okay. So let's get into it. Why are we talking about strategic workforce planning? Well, It probably won't surprise you all, and I won't dwell on it. But for a long time now, we've known that we're heading into, or currently experiencing at this point, a shortage of primary care and specialty physicians. And the numbers have gone up and down. So, you know, the AAMC did the research in 2020, it looked worse. And then they did it again in 2021, and the numbers looked better. But that research didn't take into account COVID. So goodness knows what that's going to do to our numbers. And what they didn't do with the research was equalize it or stratify it based on race, income, location, all of those good things, which then 180,000 is the top end of the range. And that's just for physicians. It's a little bit daunting, but you know, it's nothing new to you all. You're experiencing that, part of why you're here, I'm sure. We see that these numbers are being impacted by the aging population and retiring workforce, and then the more recent pieces of COVID and the Great Resignation. So I heard this morning on the radio that there was something like 4.2 million people in December quit their jobs. And they didn't break it down by sector or anything, but that's the second highest on record, and November was the highest. So we're really seeing something socially moving through just how people are viewing work at this point too. And I'll just come out and say it right now. I am an elder millennial, so you know, we're moving into those management positions, and I think that there's some conversation to be had as to how generational stuff works out in the social and demographic drivers. But yeah, so physician workforce shortages, and I'm sure you've all seen the HPSA scores. It's across the nation. So on one hand, that's daunting. On the other hand, you're not alone, I guess, is the positive takeaway from there. So we know and we acknowledge that there are these shortages, and we're talking across all provider types, and I'll have some more information and stories to share with you throughout. And please jump in with any anecdotes. Happy to listen if you want to share what's happening for you all, whether it's aligning with what I'm sharing or not. But in case you weren't aware, in June of 2020, June of 2020, July, HRSA came out with some new goals for your primary care associations. Goal C was actually in the base grant, but workforce planning, HRSA asked PCAs to work with health centers to develop these what they're calling comprehensive workforce plans, right? And then there was supplemental funding that came out in June, July of 2020 about health workforce supplemental funding, about strategic workforce plans. The language is really similar, and there was a lot of confusion, but I think we're finally getting our feet under us and figuring out, you know, shared understandings of the definitions. But this is probably a big driver of why you're hearing more about this stuff and this particular language from your primary care association. All right, so we've already talked about this, but just to make sure, health professions education and training has a specific definition as put forward by HRSA, and it's enhancing health centers' capabilities to recruit, develop, and retain their workforce by exposing health and allied health professions, students, trainees, and residents to education and training programs at health centers. So really, for the purposes of this conversation and from HRSA's perspective, we're talking about that clinical workforce. I personally believe that the same ideas can and should be expanded across the organization and across positions. And I saw there were a couple of mentions of the HPET that were outside of the clinical workforce, which is really exciting. Just pause here. Any questions on this definition of health professions, education, and training? We'll revisit it too, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going too quickly or, okay. Grow your own is a term that has been around at least as long as I've been around in the health center world. And I'm going to use them somewhat interchangeably because I think that they do work that way. HPET is an excellent way to grow your own workforce. Most of the research that's been done is in, and you'll hear me say this a lot too, because this is a lot of the work that we do with graduate medical education. A lot of the research is on physicians, right? The data shows us that 60% of medical residence physicians practice after they're done with their residency within 100 miles of their program, and more than half stay in the same state. So, and you can imagine that when you're going through your residency program, you're at a certain stage of life, perhaps, and you have a family and you've settled down and you've spent several years in a community, you put down roots. Also, you've been exposed to the culture of an organization. Human beings don't particularly care for change all the time, but the data bears out that if someone is doing their residency program, they're probably going to stay either with that organization if they can or nearby. As you'd probably guess, if you have somebody who's going through a residency program or spending a significant time in your health center, they're going to, whether they want to or not, they're going to be exposed to your mission, vision, and values. And as we all here know, we work for nonprofits, we work in healthcare, just even being exposed to that mission every single day, you can't help but have that become internalized. And so we see these folks who go through residency programs internalizing that mission, and even if they don't stay where they did their residency, they'll continue to do similar types of work. So in the safety net arena, if you will. And then we see that for those staff who are surrounding, supporting, engaging with these training programs, that their satisfaction scores are higher on average. This is, and the key word here is opted in, right? So if somebody absolutely hates the idea of being a preceptor or hates the idea of education for some reason, just fair warning, I'm also prone to hyperbole and ridiculousness. So opting in is the key word here. They're going to have higher satisfaction rates. And I have some anecdotes to share with that as well. And then when we talk about grow your own too, I think there's a lot to explore and uncover in health centers across the nation and hear what folks are doing. But if your community is seeing that you are training folks, whether it be an MA or a doctor or whatever it is in between or around it, as your community sees that there are opportunities for education in your health center, they might start to see that as a viable pathway for themselves. So it could influence a future learner to see that happening and or just generally cause goodwill across your community. If you're interested in seeing the data, this is a great research piece. And this will be in the presentations, obviously, so you can grab this off of the resources pages. ROI is a great thing to talk about when we're talking about HPET and grow your own. As I mentioned, we have increased employee satisfaction, which means people are going to stick around longer, which means your turnover is going to be less. I feel like I'm sitting in a darkening room, so I apologize if I go full dark. I can fix that. But so less turnover, we all know the expense and the cost of recruitment and hiring. It's going to be a cost saver for you. You'll have that pipeline. It'll be easier to fill those positions. You won't have those onboarding issues if someone's already done their training and knows your systems and knows your culture. And then there are resources out there. You can, I'm going to hopefully get this right. It is physicianeconomicimpact.org, I believe, is a study that on an ongoing basis examines, and it's for all physicians in a state, so it doesn't specify by specialty or for-profit or nonprofit status, how many jobs are created for every physician position in a state and how much of an economic impact through taxes, through sales revenues, created jobs, associated jobs, things like that are out there. So that data is there and it's really interesting. So, and I find that to be useful when having conversations with numbers and money folks, that there is an actual financial benefit to your state as a whole and your community for sure. And of course, at the end of the day, why we all do this work is that we want to have increased access to care. So I'll pause there. Do any of you want to share any of the benefits or ROI that you've seen through your HPET programs? Okay. Well, I encourage you to share them either on the discussion board or later. I think that really gets energy up and people excited and interested. So I just wanted to share a couple of pieces that I pulled. So CHC Inc., Community Health Center Inc., and the Weitzman Institute have the nurse practitioner residency program and some resources. If you haven't checked them out, they're worthwhile. But I thought it was interesting to see that since 2007, they've graduated 125 folks through this program, and 83% of the alumni are at FQHCs. That's huge. It's massive. It's fabulous. The Washington Association of Community Health, shout out to Region 10, has a program called In Reach, and it's for medical assistants. And I could not tell you, I know it's been in the last maybe 5 to 6 years that this program has really been up and running. So altogether, they've had 402 graduates, 193 folks are currently enrolled. It's an interesting model to look into. And after the 1-year program, they have a 96% retention rate. So these folks are actively working in health centers and they end up staying. So pretty exciting. And then again, shout out to Region 10. So Puyallup Tribal Health Authority, and I will, this is a story that I learned through Kiki. But Puyallup Tribal Health, they set up a residency program back in 2011. And it's based on traditional and native medicines, and it's really specifically crafted to support the needs of the community that the Puyallup Tribal Health Authority serves, right? So they matriculated their first residents, primary care MD/DO folks in 2012. And since then, they've graduated 23 residents. They have 12 more folks in their first to third years. And they don't have any outcomes data about where folks are practicing. Anecdotally, I will share that as I understand it, they have so many folks who, once they've graduated residency, that want to continue to work there, that they don't have space for, that they've started working with other Native organizations, I believe in Washington, perhaps beyond Washington at this point, to make sure that those residents are placed within that Native healthcare network. And so what I did is I went to their website and I pulled up their open positions, and I found it really interesting that they only have 3 positions open right now in their medical category. Now, the family medicine residency faculty is a pretty big deal, but other than that, they have no openings for MDs or DOs, which is amazing. Pretty cool outcome. Okay. So there's HRSA pressure on the PCAs. Well, they've been funded. CHCs have not. There's not a requirement yet that I know of for CHCs to engage in this work, other than hopefully it is beneficial for you. What does this mean for you? So year 1 was 2020 to 2021. Some of you may have participated in the Readiness to Train assessment tool, which was put out by CHC Inc. and Weitzman. And that was a survey to assess how health centers perceived their readiness to move forward with HPET programs. We are currently in the second half. We're closing in on the last couple of months of year 2, where the NTAPs and the PCAs are working across the country to help health centers develop comprehensive and strategic workforce plans. And then starting July 1 of this year, ideally, from HRSA's perspective, we'll have some implementation of those plans. This doesn't take into account COVID. So the best laid plans back in July of 2020 have shifted a bit, but I'd say that, for the most part, folks are moving forward and there is progress, which is exciting. Pause there. Any questions, comments, concerns? Or do you out of your minds? Yes, Dorothy.
Hi. Thought I'd turn my camera on since I was done eating lunch.
Thank you.
You bet. I know how frustrating that can be. So it's nice to see faces. Brandon chimed in from us at Shasta Community Health Center in Redding, California. We did successfully sign 3 of our senior residents coming up, which is family practice, and that's awesome. And our NPPA postgraduate fellowship has 3 hired NPs on the floor right now and some upcoming. And it's taken a while. It's taken patience for that to happen. And we're very much focusing on people that live close to the area as they come through. We have a little more options in the NPPA program because we can hire them like we would employees, where ACGME has the match and things like that. And some of our residents have even created some pipeline programs, such as a scribe program for people that are interested in going into medicine of some sort. They go, they have a split training between that and, getting into medical school or in PPA school. So they are worth doing. They take a lot of work and it takes some time, but the grow your own concept, I think, is coming to fruition, at least on our end.
Oh, that's so thank you for sharing, Dorothy. I appreciate it. And I love that. Did you say it was like the residents were actually creating the pipeline program too?
Yeah, they've come up with ideas for getting people interested. And we've had some residents that, I don't know how many, but they either work for us as scribes or in another way. And we've also had a PA that's in our pediatric department now that was a scribe in pediatrics, and she made her way back. So now she's a full-fledged clinician.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for calling my attention to all of the comments here. Let me just scroll back a bit. Okay. Yeah, so Brandon shared, thank you. And Crystal, 3 MA externs to start at one of our clinics. Oh, that's fabulous. 15 MSW interns. Wow, that's a lot, Julia. Are now and 5 are now employed. Fabulous. Wow. Wow. Oh, and I love where you're going with this, Crystal, sending folks your direction, because I think, and somebody put this in the comments too, how can we work together? Not thoughtfully, that's not quite the right word, but like consciously thinking about how we can support the broader network of health centers. So, thank you. I appreciate it, all of you. All right, I'm gonna try to pick up the pace just a little bit to get to the fun stuff, or the funner stuff. Talking about definitions. So thank you to Helen for these slides. So comprehensive workforce plan has been officially defined by HRSA thanks to the work of ACU and the STAR Center. And when we're talking about comprehensive workforce plans from HRSA's perspective, this is the recruitment and retention, and we're talking about pathways, and we're talking about salaries, we're talking about all of those R&R things that your HR folks are probably doing on a regular basis, and then some, right? And strategic hasn't been officially defined yet, but it's really focusing in on the HPET, those training programs, those learners. So then let's see, we've got this ACU slide. So comprehensive workforce plan, a little bit more information here. I do want to note the mission-driven, equitable, and inclusionary values. Very cool that that's been coming up a lot in conversation too. Again, this data will be here, and it's all on the STAR2 web pages as well. So, and as I mentioned, strategic still hasn't been defined, but I just really liked the 1980s neon sign there. Adding my own little twist to it, I hope this Christmas dinner is a thing that actually exists. But basically the way I look at it is these comprehensive workforce plans and strategic workforce plans, if not fully enmeshed because of the way we're defining it in the HRSA charges, they are related, right? So at the very least, they're a Venn diagram, and they have all of these different pieces and all of these different layers. So, and then there's the link for the clinician comprehensive workforce plan definition. I share that with you not to confuse you, but we are focusing on strategic and HPET. So if you remember nothing else, strategic equals HPET. Now with HPET, this is getting into a little bit of what Dorothy was sharing. I failed econ twice. It was a required course for me in high school, and it was taught by the wrestling coach. I was not into it. I was very much a very cool theater and choir student. So this is my economics of a clinical workforce development. I did pass the second time because the wrestling coach was tired of having me in his classroom. So this is my economics, so not scientific, but as we're seeing it, so with supply and demand, right? If we stay on the current trajectory of increasing training slots and having students come in, it's continuing to go up. Our supply is continuing to go up. But where we are currently is that our demand is much higher already, and it's going to continue to change and evolve. And as we saw with the AAMC study, it's potentially going to grow, especially as we're seeing folks retire and the aging of the boomer generation. Ideally, on the right-hand side, we are going to see our supply curve get a little bit steeper, and our demand curve might stay the same, but we are going to be meeting that demand at some point in some time frame in the future. And in a perfect world, our supply would slightly outpace our demand, right? And the reason I put that in there is because wouldn't it be a wonderful, wonderful world where we aren't having to hire just anyone, where we had a choice? Anecdotally, and maybe you guys have had this experience as well, not every learner that's going to come through your doors is going to be a good fit for you culturally, long-term, all those things. So it'd be nice to know that there's a bigger supply out there than your demand. And how that, excuse me, how that plays out, right, is right now we're seeing the prices being, well, we've always kind of seen the prices as being pretty high because we're competing with hospitals and the like, but we haven't reached this equilibrium yet. That said, what we're talking about with HPET and grow your own strategies, so this gray line right past the word supply there, let's say we start putting these HPET and grow your own programs in place now. Again, kind of going back to what Dorothy was saying, we have this ramp up and wait space where I thought there was the one animation in this whole presentation is that yellow circle, so you're welcome. We have this ramp up and wait space where we're literally waiting for these folks that we're growing to reach maturity, if you will, in the positions. So we're really aiming for is that equilibrium, but we are currently either in or prior to that ramp up and wait space. And what that does to us, and this is a long pipeline, especially if we're talking about physicians, right? The number of years to be pre-med, then med school, then residencies, and blah, 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 and on and on. We have to wait for these folks to ripen and mature. So what's incumbent upon us at this point is to do a little bit of predicting, which can be uncomfortable, especially the longer the timeline is, the less correct we're going to be, right? But beginning this practice now of predicting, hopefully will get us to a place where we're not having to be reactive, where if you have a provider who, for whatever reason, suddenly leaves your organization, you have that pool of folks that you can reach out to and say, oh, I have an opening. And they've been like, yes, couldn't wait to get that position. That's where we want to be. We want to be in that preemptive space. And so what that means for us, as you know, is strategic planning, right? So we got to be strategic about how we're thinking about these things. And if we're not already using strategic planning concepts around our workforce development, as we are for anticipating patient demographic changes or other strategic expansion opportunities, if you will, we really need to put this concept of strategic planning onto our workforce. So again, full circle back to why we're doing this. I'll pause here. Thoughts, questions, concerns? Okay. I'm going to talk specifically about approaches and models. We went through the definition, and as I mentioned, we're specifically talking about the clinical provider workforce, although it can be applied elsewhere. And to some extent, we're talking about learners from outside of the health center. So we're not maybe talking about an upskilling for a medical assistant to move into a different provider type, right? We can, absolutely we can, but for the purposes of this conversation, that's like that gray middle area of the Venn diagram, I think. Oops. All right, so this graphic, if you're interested, CPCA has a number of resources that you can dig into, specifically on residency development, if that is a thing that makes you really excited. This is an image that we created, and it's based on a residency program. So, and I share this with you to share that your return on investment of people who are going to be engaged and have all of those benefits that we discussed earlier it's on a spectrum. So the more intense of a relationship you have with your learners, so in this example, a sponsoring institution for a residency, You have full control over the curriculum. You have full control over the interview process and the match and all those different pieces. And the residents are spending the greatest amount of their time working with your health center and your patient population. That's going to give you the highest return on investment as far as retention. To the other end of this residency spectrum is being a rotation site for another residency program. And we're talking how having learners come through for maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on what it is that they're learning. And there's just not enough time for them to really dig into the culture and understand what it is that makes your health center special. There's nothing right or wrong about being anywhere on the spectrum. And I think that there's a great argument to be made for starting, and I'll actually make the argument later, for starting on the right-hand side of the spectrum if this is a new concept to you, so that you can see how your infrastructure supports it, right? So you don't have to eat the whole elephant and become a sponsoring institution for a residency program today. Doesn't have to happen. I want to share just really quickly, in case you didn't know, because I found that some folks don't know, there is a thing called Teaching Health Center Graduate Medical Education Funding through HRSA, and it's pretty specific. And actually, if you didn't know, they just released a new round of it yesterday. Applications are due on March 31st. And so we're seeing this is a faster cycle for another round of THC-GME funding than we've seen. And basically what it is HRSA is giving funding to, let's just say, health centers, for a simple definition, that's not the full conversation, who engage in these particular types of residency programs. So it's an extra funding source. It's really exciting. It makes becoming a residency program that much more accessible for health centers. So cool. And I will just add too that what would it have been August, September of last year, new funding came out that's planning and development funds, which is very exciting. So if you have any questions about THC-GME or the planning and development stuff, let me know. I'm happy to talk your ear off about it or connect you with my colleague Kiki, who is the resident genius on that stuff. So I'm glad you're liking the graphics. Hopefully you'll continue to enjoy them. I like to have fun in my presentations. So as far as models go, I just want to, you guys shared where you're engaging. So this is probably going to be a review for most of you. But when we're talking about physicians, and I stole these categories straight from the Readiness to Train assessment tool that was guided by HRSA through CHC Inc. So when we're talking about physicians, there's a number of ways that health centers can interact through health professions education and training. Big ones we hear about are residency programs. And as I mentioned, there's that full spectrum there, and there's going to be a full spectrum for all of them. Fellowship, I don't think we tend to see many fellowships in health centers. I haven't done that research yet, so don't quote me on it. There are opportunities to interact with med students. They need to have clerkships, so perhaps there's an opportunity for them to engage with your health center that way. And then something that I think is really important not to be overlooked, because we have so, maybe it's just because of the THC-GME funding, we have so many conversations about residency programs. Having those touch points pre-med before they're going to college are so important. Or undergrad experiences, or high school, or middle school, or even elementary school. You know, when I grow up, I think I wanted, well, I know what I wanted to be, let me not lie. If you'd asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, I would have told you that I wanted to be the president of the United States and or a pizza delivery person. And I will tell you, I did achieve one of those goals and I really enjoyed it. But it was because, not gonna lie, getting Domino's when I was a kid was a really special thing. And I think I just saw like the Domino's pizza delivery person as this like amazing person who delivered the pizza once every month or whatever. So those experiences, those exposures are really important. So they're not to be overlooked. Oh, and this is where I'm talking about, I don't have the full list of everything. So if I am missing anything specific, please feel free to put that in the chat, because this will come back for us later on in our sessions. Not necessarily today, but hopefully in the future. With nursing, we have another number of options. I wanted to just list the program governing organization as the equivalent of a sponsoring institution. But there are these opportunities for field or laboratory activities. Maybe there's a group project. Is there something that they can come in and create a project within your health center? with these learning experiences. And again, we have that pre-nursing, it's undergrad, or I'm not as big of an expert in nursing, I'll own that. But you know, these opportunities prior to someone determining that when they grow up, they want to be a nurse, that can help them determine that. So, or help influence them, I suppose. Awesome, thank you, Beth. An ARNP may practice independently as a provider. And I think that comes up too a number of times. And it's helpful to see, I was looking at the attendance list, where all of you are located, because you're going to have different allowances, abilities, or restrictions based on where you are, depending on the provider types and the licensure rules, right? Get back over here to the presentation. All right, with physician and medical assistants, so it's not physicians, physician assistants, we have a number of opportunities here as well. Apprenticeships comes up here. And I think, again, depending on how your state approaches apprenticeships, that will impact how you can. But again, early education. I love that idea of having folks engaged in describing, just even being exposed to that language is really, really cool opportunity for people. All right. With dental is a graduate medical education opportunity. They are, instead of being accredited by ACGME, it's accredited by CODA. And so it follows a lot of the same models of different timelines. But there are also, again, opportunities for us to reach out and impact these folks. And I think that I want to mention too here as I'm thinking about it out loud, we talk a lot about community engagement. You know, how are we engaging our patients? This work of HPET can and maybe should in some way at least overlap with that broader community engagement work that we're doing, right? And I think I haven't called it out specifically, but I'd want to make sure that it's said of we want our providers to reflect the community that they're serving. What better way than like letting all of those elementary school kids that you're serving know that they too can become a medical provider or dental provider, a clinical provider of some sort, right? Behavioral health and substance abuse. This is one that had so many different like credential and licensing types out there. So this is broad and deep, and I need to dig further into it. You know, one of the things that we continue to hear on a regular basis is social workers and the need for like social workers generally. But then we also need to like supervise these social workers so they can get so they can become LCSWs and whatnot. So thank you. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left. Okay, and pick up the pace here. Stop me if you have any questions. All right, and then in the other category, also called out in the readiness to train assessment tool, we have pharmacy, chiropractic, registered dietitians, and there are also a number of ways that we can reach out and connect with these folks. And I really want to dig into, there's some really cool pharmacy programs out there, and I think, maybe not, I'll double check on that. And last but absolutely not least, community health workers. If you haven't already, go and connect with MHP Salud. They're another NTAP. They have an incredible amount of resources if you're thinking about community health workers as a new thing or something that you already have. And this is something I think they've shared within the last year or so, is the career web of different ways of getting community health workers engaged in the organization, as well as moving through the organization into other positions. I mean, and community health workers are just so incredibly valuable and should never be overlooked. And it's an incredible entry point for community learners as well. So head on over to MHP Salud. They're good folks and they have some great resources over there too. So as you are going through, as you are thinking about either developing a new HPET program or enhancing the one you have or expanding the one you have, these are some of the things that I see as the key considerations that you need to keep in mind. And there's going to be others, and each of these is going to have multiple bullet points. But for the purpose of level setting today, these are the pieces that I see as kind of our starting points. Obviously, if you have zero need for medical assistance, I mean, I guess you could, if you have the ability, go ahead and start a medical assistant program, but that might not be the best strategic need. And when I'm talking about need, like, what's the community needs? What is, are you anticipating an explosion in a certain population? Obviously, we can't necessarily anticipate, like, you know, I'll stop and redirect, but need is what do you need currently in your patient population, as well as what do you see down the line in your community? Organizational culture is incredibly important for a variety of reasons. The two I want to call out are a culture of education needs to be a thing, and that can be defined a bunch of different ways. But if you don't have education as being part of the central culture of your organization, and it's just sort of a thing that's out here, that's not going to get you the best bang for your buck, or get your learners super engaged, or really, it might even impact the longevity of your program, to be totally honest. And the other piece about organizational culture is if you have a bad culture, like, and I'm sure you don't think you do, but if your staff satisfaction surveys are like in the dirt, maybe an HPEG program isn't the way to go, because you're going to bring learners into that culture as well. So there might be a little bit of house cleaning to address with organizational culture. Faculty is a big thing, and we'll talk more about faculty down the line. I mentioned inclusivity and equity. Let's see, there's JEDI, so justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. I saw another one today, belonging, and access. So like all of these different inclusivity and equity ideas, making sure that those are a key central part of your curriculum design, your program design, super important. Gap analysis we'll come to in just a second. And I mentioned the state requirements, or wherever you are, you know, if you don't want to break any laws designing these programs, and making sure that these programs align with your overall organizational vision, strategy, approach, all those different pieces. And this can go two ways. Either it's an obvious like add-on to what you're already talking about as an organization, or, and I've seen this in a number of, cases recently, this is an opportunity for your organization, your board of directors, your leadership, all of your stakeholders to take a step back and say, is it time to refresh our vision, mission, and values, right? I think the vision, mission, and values of an organization, you'll need to have a vision, mission of your HPET program too. It's actually a specific requirement for residency programs accredited by ACGME, but additionally, you know, referencing that in your organizational mission and vision, just make sure that it's aligned. Again, we don't want something to be isolated out on the other end of the planet from the core of what your organization is doing. When I'm talking about gap analysis, this can go a number of different ways. And again, it depends on what the program is. What I did here is I pulled from, this is a family medicine residency requirements. And so if you're looking at an accredited program like a residency, like a fellowship, and there's a variety of others that we could go into, and there's a variety of different accrediting bodies, which we can address down the line if that's something you all are interested in. There are also opportunities for HPET that don't have to be accredited. This is what I'm talking about. So these are their program requirements. So before you even can start your program, this is what they're talking about you need to have in place. And space is a big one, especially for family medicine and other residency programs, making sure that your residents have the appropriate amount of space to do their thing. So in the way that I approached this gap analysis, basically I'm saying that overall, the top header, the program ensures the availability of adequate resources for resident education is the header, right? And the sub bullets are the ones that aren't bolded. We haven't achieved that requirement because on lines 7 and 8, my health center doesn't have the contiguous space for clinical work and education, and we don't have a conference room. Now, does that mean that we need to build a new building? No, but it is something that we need to talk about, make plans for, and be specific about. And I think there's a lot to learn from these highly regulated or programs that we can apply to the less regulated programs. Staffing, probably the thing that comes to your minds immediately, especially those of you who are HR folks. Do you have the folks who are interested in being preceptors? And if they're interested, are they any good? What was I heard today? Something like, you are a much better teacher in your third year than you are in your first year. So really thinking about what your capacity is. And also, if we're talking about patient volumes and visit volume being a real big need for your organization, an HPET program isn't going to increase your volumes right away. So making sure that you're not giving a mixed message of, you have to have the highest productivity. Oh, by the way, we need you to train these 6 students, right? And your staffing, I just think, and this is going to be different again for every program, that you want your education and staffing teams to mirror what your existing care teams and the support structures look like, right? Partners, we can go all day about partners, so I just threw out a couple for you to check out. Highlighting that your AHECs are an amazing resource. Every state has at least one, if not more. Hospitals and academic institutions come up a lot, again, with residency situations, a little bit trickier there. Other CHCs in your county, CHCs in your state, CHCs nearby that are across state lines, like, check out what's happening with your peers and your colleagues too. Your CBOs are a great place to check out, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And contracting is a big deal. Beth, yeah, we can definitely talk about the resources for compensation and things like that. I think it would be, if you can put in the chat, if you're thinking about a specific program, we can definitely do it in a broad way about precepting reimbursement. But yeah. Collaboration probably goes without saying. There are benefits and there are drawbacks on collaborating. Going on your own path by yourself makes things a lot easier, but then you also have you have all of the responsibility, you have all of the burden is placed on you or your organization if you're doing it by yourself. And anytime you're working with other people, it's just a little bit more complicated. So I won't dig in too much there. We can talk a lot about models of collaboration. We can talk about consortia. We could talk about partnerships with those types of organizations I mentioned before. All of these things are on the table for us to talk about in the next couple of sessions. Okay. Most importantly on the key considerations is the curriculum. And I challenge you all to, in the chat, we're not going to jump over to the Menti. I challenge you all in the chat at least to think about, for a hot second, I'm going to give you a full minute, to think about what is it about your health center that sets you apart. Do you have a killer community health program? Do you have, you're just really good at SUD, OUD? What are the things that really set you apart? For example, going back to that Puyallup tribal health group, they have the native health and the traditional medicine piece. That is so cool. What is that piece of your curriculum that's going to make a learner go, oh, I really want to work with this? And if you've ever met Kiki, she calls it the sexy. What is the sexy of your curriculum? And I'm being curious. We'll give you all a minute to put, a couple of words in the chat as to what would set your organization curriculum potentially apart. I'm going to take it from the chat, but you've all fallen asleep. Okay, well, there we go. There we go. Thank you all. Oh, and Dean, I'm going to put you on the spot at a future session too, to talk about your program as well. He talks a lot about it. Cool. I encourage you all to keep going. Your sexy may not seem that sexy to you. Maybe you're getting ideas from other folks, but I would love to. Yes, street medicine. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay. 4 minutes. I'm going to get you out of here at least 1 minute early. Start where you are. Take credit for what you're already doing. We did the the mentee early on in the session, when we're talking about the strategic workforce plans, what I really want you to keep in mind is you don't have to create a brand new program to have a strategic workforce plan. You can start where you are and talk about, you know, even if it is just, I have a doctor who goes out once a year to talk to the elementary school. That's an HPET program. Let's take credit for what we're doing, right? A couple notes on support structures outside of this space, if you're interested. As I mentioned, your primary care associations are funded to help you all out with developing these strategic workforce plans. You have your NTAPs, formerly your NCAs, here in the room, the ACU, Star 2 Center Group. I mentioned MHP and CHC Inc. And then they're coming soon. I don't know how public the announcements are, so forgive me, but there will be a new THCGME NTAP coming online. There's also the Rural Health NTAP, which I should probably have mentioned. And your AHEX, I can't say enough about your AHEX. NAC also has resources. And just as I was saying, can't say enough about AHEX, shout out to our Alaska folks in the room. The South Central Alaska AHEC is housed collaboratively with the Alaska Primary Care Association, and they do some really cool stuff. They have this pre-apprenticeship training that can give people, like, you know, what are your other skills? I can do first aid, those sorts of things. And they do actual apprenticeship programs for people who are currently employed in the health centers. And then I couldn't help it, but the pictures are so adorable. They do these K-12 health career academies and camps. And one of the things they do is just dress up for like a doctor for an hour. And that is absolutely an HPET pathway developing activity. So skip that. Okay, I'm gonna pause and say, if you have any questions, because of time, I am going to say, put them in the chat. Good call on the AHEX, Dean, and we can address that as well. If you have any questions, observations, comments, feel free to throw those in the chat. We're going to go through those and help to design the next couple of sessions based on your feedback. You do have some homework. This looks like a long list. I promise you it's not. We have a pre-assessment that I think is like 6 questions. I'm going to send out a separate survey that's basically helps me narrow down which programs you all are interested in. If you wouldn't mind, take a moment to go check out the discussion board, create or comment on it. One of my favorite things is memes. So if you want to even just post a meme to the discussion board, that would be full credit for your homework. And then for next session, if you are able to bring in a workforce or an HR data dashboard that you're willing to share, if it's de-identified, whatever it needs to be, we want to have a quick conversation about what data we're looking at when we're prognosticating on the future. So, and I'll just draw your attention to the evaluation, which has popped up on your screen. And I'm just going to say thank you so much. Feel free to reach out. And we'll see you guys on February 22nd. Woo, with 1 minute and maybe just a few seconds to spare. But thank you all. Really appreciate you.
Awesome, Kelly. Thanks so much for an awesome session today. As Kelly mentioned, check out the discussion board. We'll have a ton of resources there, so you don't want to miss all of the things there. And as she also mentioned, there's going to be some, a few sort of like a pre-assessment and evaluation going. So anyway, thank you so much to Kelly for an amazing session. And thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day. And we're ending right on time, and we'll see you here in 3 weeks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.